Welcome to the Peace Over Pain podcast with Dr. Kevin Reese, where we examine the body as a whole unit and move people from health burdens to health miracles. So get your questions ready, because the show starts now.
Good morning and welcome to the Peace Over Pain podcast. It is July 5th, 2022. I'm your host, Joe LaChance, and I'm here with the author of Peace Over Pain, Dr. Kevin W. Reese. Welcome, Dr. Reese. How are you today?
Happy New Day, Joe. I'm excited because I trimmed my ears today. And as an older gentleman, sometimes we got to take care of our ears. So.
Well, yeah, I had to do my nose yesterday, believe it or not. So I understand that. But before we get started, I just want to remind people that we will be taking your questions at around 10:30. So if you have a question for Dr. Reese, please leave them in the comments or click the Zoom link in the description to be live on air. So, all right, Dr. Reese, we're getting into it now. We talked about the three macro methods of healing, and we got through the first two. We talked about postural therapy being number one, number two being clinical nutrition, and now we're on to number three, which is the third macro method of healing, which is mindfulness. And it's actually one of my favorite topics. You know, it's a pretty big topic. Mindfulness is kind of a buzzword out there. You see it around. And, but a lot of people don't know what it is and what it entails. They think about, mindfulness is meditation and yoga and inspirational quotes, memes on the internet, things like that, chanting or their spiritual practice. I think a lot of people, correlate their spiritual practice with mindfulness. Right. And I think there's more to it than that. I think it's an overall philosophy and an overall way of life. So explain a little bit about your version of mindfulness.
It's a non-religious method of managing your thoughts, your emotions, and your surroundings and your circumstances.
Right.
In other words, not letting your onboard computer, which we call a mind, hijack your life. Right. That's the simplest way that I can put it. And so many people are suffering with anxiety or depression, and it's not necessary. And I know that triggers some people, but thankfully, I like triggering people.
I kind of have that ability myself. So you're because I know a lot of people, they go visit a psychologist or a psychiatrist and they say, I'm suffering from depression and things like that. And depending, a psychiatrist is going to tell them, well, it's a chemical imbalance, and you need a pill, you're going to need a pill.
Well, a chemical imbalance would take us back to last episode.
I was just going to make that correlation.
Nutritional deficiency.
Right. I was just going to, that was where I was going with that. So, if you took care of the nutritional deficiency along with some mindfulness, you wouldn't need those drugs. You wouldn't need to visit that psychiatrist every week and pay him, and you would be able to do self-care, really self-care and know how to do it right. So, you talk about the brain being an onboard computer, and I love that, I love that analogy, because we really are. If you really look at it, we have a hard drive, basically, where we store all of our memories, we store our information in there. And then we have like a motherboard, right, which would be like the brain itself, actually.
Yeah, and the spine coming off of it.
And the spine coming off of it, right. And then, the heart would be the power source, They all have a power source. Our eyes are the screen, so if you really look at it, we really are. And even some of the terminology we use for computers is used for humans.
Yep.
And so what do you do with a computer, right? I would say, like, when we're born, our hard drive is pretty blank except for the base programming. And when you say, as a computer, we are programmed. And I think people need to understand that we're programmed from day one.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our DNA. We have base programming that keeps our heart beating, keeps our lungs breathing, keeps our, circulating, dictates when we sleep, when we eat. These are all programmed into us from birth. So that's your base programming, right?
It's like animal programming.
Yeah, it's like I liken it to the animals. People say, well, why does the animal just eat, gather nuts, and do this all day? Because that's what it's programmed to do, and they all have their function in the world. And what are the bees? Why do the bees just know what to do?
Yeah.
Because they're born with the programming in there. Why do they know to spread the pollen? That's their function. And we're the same way. So anyway, you get born with the base programming, but then you become programmed, right?
Yeah. Basically, it really starts around 2. That's when the ego kicks in. And that's what they call the terrible 2s.
Right.
And
you start having a will of your own a little bit.
Right. And it's like I describe in the book, if you take a toy away from a child, a 2-year-old, there's usually a big temper tantrum.
Yeah.
That's a lot of mental pain. And this carries over into adult life. And people don't like to lose things or have things taken away from them.
Right. And it's
all programming. It's all
right. And even that phase, that terrible 2, is kicked off by the programming in your genetics.
Yep.
That's even programmed in your growth throughout life, your puberty, programmed in. That doesn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't just happen. And so 2 years old, right, you start to become, programmed. Let's say you start to learn different things. You have your own will. You've probably been starting to learn right from wrong, right?
Yeah.
But your main programmers are
mom and dad. I mean,
to begin with, right?
It's totally mom and dad. That's why when we get older, we have, not everyone, but a lot of people have resentment towards mom and dad, or they have all these issues because these are the first 2 human beings that we want approval from. And the interesting thing about it is they're running off of their programming.
Right.
So it's not even their fault. And so when we understand this, when we come to this understanding, you start to get free because you stop blaming people.
Right.
And I caught some slack recently because I made a comment about, when the shootings happened recently. I mean, there's been a bunch, but the one in Texas, the one in Buffalo.
Right.
Where I, didn't blame the shooter. And some people were like, but the shooter is running off of their programming.
Right.
So instead of becoming a victim and falling into victim-oriented thinking, it's better to have the mindfulness and the understanding that every single human being is programmed.
Right.
And in that programming is going to be mistakes and flaws.
Right.
So these young men are acting out by shooting, okay, and they're killing people. Of course, that's not thumbs up, but your programming is not that far off. So yeah, maybe you don't go kill someone, but maybe you yell at someone.
Right.
Or maybe you criticize people.
Judge people.
You judge people. Or you maybe you steal from people, or maybe
get violent, punch walls. Even.
Maybe you punch walls. Maybe,
fight with people.
Yes. So we're all very flawed. And some people just take it all the way and they murder, they steal. And that's all programming. And this is highlighted very nicely in the movie The Joker.
Right.
Where the man went through so much stuff. And then society kind of cast him away. And then he finally said, screw it. Okay. Here we go. And he freed himself.
Right.
But not to get too off topic here, but our programming typically happens from 2 to 12.
2 to 12, but it does continue.
It does continue. So by the time you're 13, you're pretty darn programmed, and you have what we call an ego. And an ego is basically your identity. It's your false self.
It's your created self that you use. Yeah.
Yes. It's not even real. It's just, it's our computer created it.
A persona
Right. So when I was 13, 14, I was already thinking I'm going to become a broadcaster. And I was already thinking, I'm going to broadcast for the New York Yankees, or become a VJ, like someone on MTV. And that sowed my ego. And so I knew exactly what I was going to do come 16, 17, going to broadcasting school and then going to college, etc. So everyone develops this ego and this identity, and their likes and dislikes are there, their desires are there, their dream. Everyone talks about the dream. So in the book, I call it dream-based reality.
Right.
And of course, that's an oxymoron.
Because we're living in a dream world, an illusory world.
Because of the onboard computer.
Right.
So if the computer takes over, and you, as a human, don't understand that you're not your computer,
right,
then you get caught in the dream.
Exactly. You operate as if that is the real you. That's why you get offended. Yeah. That's right. Exactly right. When it's not, it's like your persona. And people don't, the word persona in Greek, mask, right?
Yes.
It's your mask. It's like your avatar that you have for this video game, this simulated, I'm getting deep, but this reality, it's like your avatar that you're using to play this game.
Right.
And like you say, the programming comes from your parents in the beginning, but I don't think a lot of people realize the other sources of it. It can come from school. That's a big one.
School's a big one. Once you go to kindergarten and school, I can't speak for other areas, but here in America, they're basically preparing you for our jungle, our wilderness, which is called capitalism.
Right.
And so in capitalism, you have to compete. And this is our wilderness. So the rabbits and the squirrels and the coyotes and the foxes, they're all out in the wild and they're all surviving in their own way. Our survival in society is capitalism. We all have the opportunity to get rich or poor.
Right. Depends on our programming.
A lot of it depends on our programming. That's right.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of people who grow up poor and end up rich.
Because they changed the programming.
Right.
They consciously switched the programming, which will bring us to mindfulness in a second. But I just want to wrap this up to say, you said it from usually age 2 to 12 that you get your main programs. You pretty much have developed your ego by then, and your personality and your identity. And the sources of programming are, like you said, parents, school, government, media, huge programming, especially nowadays. And now it's even social media. People don't realize the influence that kind of stuff has still, even at age 30 or 40, on their brain, and how it's still programming them a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they're supposed to feel a certain way about a certain issue, or they're supposed to do certain things. So, so we understand that we're programmed, and that's why we do the things we do.
That's right.
So you get to a point where your life's not working, right? You're having all these things that you still have hopes and dreams, like you say, but they just don't seem to be working out. You get to the point, where you decide you're going to take over your own mind and control your own programming. And this is where mindfulness comes in, where you have to make the realization first that you almost have two personalities. You have to kind of realize there are two selves.
Yeah. Or you can look at it as, the soul or beingness.
Right. It's if you look at the yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole, but there's actually two parts inside that whole to make it one. And you could say the human brain is that way too. There are two parts that make one brain, one mind, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the light and the dark, right?
Right. And it's true. We all have to admit we have a dark side. And sometimes that dark side takes over the programming. Let's be real, because of what is on the outside world.
We're all capable of murder. All of us.
All of
us. That's right. And you know it because everyone has that one person, maybe even two or three, that can get under your skin like no one else.
And you want to
And you get so frustrated and so angry, and it builds and it builds and it builds. And it's when it builds that you become capable of murder.
Right.
Now, whether you go through with it or not is
another story. But I understand that. I do. I know that feeling. I'm sure we've all had it. So you get to the point where you want to change, basically, and you make this realization, okay, I have two selves, and I need to change. This is where mindfulness comes in. Where do you start?
Well, the first step is the realization that you are not your onboard computer.
You're not your ego.
You have to watch it. You have to become a watcher.
Right, an observer.
In the book, I break down the thoughts into two categories. There's Santa Claus thoughts and there's Michael Myers thoughts. It's a very simple analogy. And Santa Claus and Michael Myers are fictional characters. They are not real.
Right.
So this analogy, I've come up with a lot of analogies in my career, and this one might be the best.
Yes.
Because when you watch a Michael Myers movie, it's not real. Like, that Michael Myers isn't going to jump out of the bushes and come get you. It for a fact. So it's important that you come to the conclusion that the mind is just spewing out things based off programming. And if you know it's not real, then that's the realization that, I don't have to give it any power anymore.
Right.
And same thing with Santa Claus. Now, I would much rather have Santa Claus thoughts than Michael Myers thoughts. But Santa Claus is fake too.
Right.
So when you have those feelings of, I'm so joyful. I'm the man. I'm doing so good. And a lot of times Santa Claus thoughts come from music.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to music and you like, I remember I used to listen to a lot of Jay-Z. And why? Because it's successful. It was, you know, you can overcome and become rich and be powerful. And, you know, and so music, I used to listen to Rocky music that would get me excited to work out and have the visions of I can overcome, I can be an underdog, and I can this. And this isn't real. This is music putting a battery in your back and making you have Santa Claus thoughts. But Santa Claus thoughts are not real. They're just feeding into your ego.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael Myers' thoughts would be the anxiety and the depression and the what if this and what if that and oh my gosh, what if I die? Oh my gosh. And so that's not real either. So all we have is right here and right now.
And that's the key to mindfulness, really. And I listened to your podcast, this week, and you were talking about the enlightened life, and mindfulness came up. And it really is, it's about living in the now and thinking about what is happening now, because a lot of that programming brings you back to the past, right? Or makes you think about the future.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the people with anxiety is a symptom of fear.
Right.
And fear is in the future. There's no fear in the past.
No, it's more like remorse, sadness, the other negative things.
Right. And so we're in dream-based reality. And, you know, this relates big time to the Peace Over Pain clinic and book and all that, because when you don't feel good, when you're in pain and discomfort and your body's doing things that maybe you're not used to, the mind can jump in and make it worse.
Right.
And so we have to nip this in the bud in order to heal this. The body can heal
follows the mind.
Through the mind.
Yes.
And so, you know, that's why I bring that's why we have the 3 macro methods. And you know, in order to heal faster and more efficiently. But the example that I like to use, we can all relate to. And that's horniness.
Right.
Okay? So let's all be adults here. When you have a sexual fantasy, the body has a sexual reaction.
Yes.
Right?
Like it's reality.
Ladies, you know what I'm talking about. Fellas, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I don't need to give you details. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So, knowing that, we can make the conclusion that the body follows the mind.
Yes.
Now, it's the same thing with anxiety. The mind goes here, the body goes there.
And illness.
So, same with depression. The mind goes here, the body goes here.
Right.
And so we're creating quite a bit with our onboard computer, and this needs to be taken care of just as much as drinking the 90 essential nutrients and just as much as doing your postural therapy. This is all a complete and holistic approach to healing the body like nobody's ever really seen before.
Right. No, I agree. And I'm using it myself and I've seen results. So All right, so let's get into a couple methods. How do you take control of your mind? I mean, I have my own certain methods, but there are certain ones that you lay out in the book, and so let's go through them real quick. How do you do it?
Well, first and foremost, my first spiritual mentor always told me to never use the word control. Mm-hmm. He said it's more restraint than control. I'm not so sure we can control the onboard computer. It acts on its own, just like the body acts on its own.
Right.
I can't control the thoughts.
No, what does Andy say? You're listening. You're not really thinking.
Right. That's right. You're listening to the computer spit out all this stuff.
Right.
Right. Our buddy Andy would call it the vomit box.
Right.
And it's just going to do this and that and and you just watch and listen.
Don't pay no mind.
That's step one.
Mm-hmm.
That's step one. In the 120-day program that we have, I give people what I call the thank you meditation. Thank you meditation works. There's, some people go get cognitive behavior therapy. Some therapists are trained in cognitive behavior therapy.
Right.
I use Ho'oponopono. So there are different mindfulness.
Right. And the thing with meditation, I think it's more of a micro method within the macro.
Yes.
Because meditation, what it does, if you get it right and you do it, it allows you to rise above that ego and kind of almost be the watcher, be able to look at yourself from a different perspective and shut down your onboard computer. So what you're really listening to, again, is your true self, or connecting with a higher source of energy, which then allows you to be able to be the watcher of your thoughts. Right. Yeah. So you got to get to a point where, look, we all live in this world. Unless you're living in an ashram up with the monks, you're not going to get this perfect. No. Because again, you're going to go out to the grocery store and something's going to trigger you. You're driving traffic and the negative voice in your head is going to go, oh, that son of a, and you got to be able to go, no, he's acting on his programming,
That's right.
You're fine. I mean, you have to, it becomes an inner dialogue. What I'm saying?
It's a lot easier with strangers than it is with your close loved ones.
Yes.
Especially someone you live with, mom, dad, husband, wife, son, daughter. Those are really the people that are going to get you, and this is how we test ourselves. We have to go into the line of fire. After the mindfulness training, it's constant. And the thing about mindfulness training is it's tedious because it's all the time.
It is. And it is true. It's like a child. They call it the monkey brain, because it is. It runs around like a monkey and and you got to keep an eye on it. You got to chase it around. It's the same thing. It's your child brain too.
Yeah.
But yet you need it because it also is very good at problem solving, right? The purpose of the mind is to help you get through this world. The problem is its duty, its job is to protect you. It's like to protect you. And it's almost like a helicopter mom. And it's trying to protect you too much. No, don't do that. It could be dangerous, or things like that. So you got to look at it, like a different part of you. And, the more you watch it, the better you get. And I know in the book that you go through a bunch of different techniques on how to do it. But we're getting to the point where we're ready to take some questions and stuff. Okay. So before we do that,
we have somebody that
there's somebody in the waiting room. We're going to bring her in right after this message.
Nice. Finally, someone's brave.
Someone got brave. So let's play this message.
Have you read Peace Over Pain yet? This short but powerful book reveals how to eliminate chronic pain and or illness faster than any other known therapeutic approach. Download the Peace Over Pain book for only $4.95 and gain instant access to the ebook version, audiobook version, and a video training with Dr. Reese. Go to peaceoverpain.com and start reading or listening right now. This is the information you've been praying for.
All right, so it's time. We're going to do our question period. Do you want to go with the guest first?
Oh, she's been waiting, it seems like. We might as well.
Yep, waiting patiently. Let's bring her on in. This is T. Marie, and she has a question for you, Dr. Reese. I did admit her. Well, while we are waiting, I admitted her. I don't know what happened. There she is. Okay. T. Marie, are you there?
I think it's Christine.
Christine.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. So I am unable to be on camera this morning.
Oh, we just lost her.
We lost her there.
Man.
She must have a bad connection.
Call
back in, T. Please try it. If you have the Zoom app, use your Zoom app. You can download it on your phone. But
I was excited to have someone on. It's like being lost in the desert, and it's like a human
right.
Water. All right.
Well, we can go with a question we got on the internet.
Sure.
And we'll start with that. So our first question of the day came actually this morning from a Renee Green. And she says, what would be the cause of a thyroid nodule?
Thyroid nodules, probably a pocket of lymph,
Hardens up.
Yeah. Most nodules and cysts and tumors and things like that is just lymphatic fluid sticking together.
Blocking. And how do you get rid of that without surgery?
Well, you gotta get the lymph moving, and so we gotta look at posture. Posture is the big cause of lymphatic stagnation.
Okay, right, and inactivity. Yeah, there's a lot of things. We did talk about jumping on a trampoline. There's all kinds of different things you can do to stimulate your lymphatic system. So basically, go towards your lymph system. So, okay, very, very cool. So here's one that kind of has something to do with what we talked about today. So this comes from Tom on Facebook. And he says, I'm a listener of your Inner Peace podcast and commend you for being so open about your dark night of the soul experience. What would you say the difference between a dark night experience and regular depression?
Okay. Well, dark night of the soul is when you start purging your pain body, all the emotions, everything that you've suppressed and repressed in your life, and it all starts to come out. Right. Typically, this is a lot of crying. Sometimes it's long periods of crying. Typically, it's crying every day. Mm-hmm. Dark night of the soul is not something that lasts for a week. It goes a very long time. And it's an opportunity to get into your mindfulness and to really start working on yourself.
Right.
And fear, to really conquer your fear.
A big fear.
Depression is different. Depression is typically you are upset with the past and you are now in victim-oriented thinking.
Right.
And you are F the world.
Right.
And you're typically...
I just don't want to deal with it. Right.
You typically sleep a lot and you don't want to do anything. And, you know, a lot of people, they stop going to their job. They stop showering. They just don't care anymore. Dark Night of the Soul is not like that. You still care and you're still motivated to do things. In fact, you're motivated to get rid of the Dark Night. Right. It's almost like you have a disease in a way and you want to get rid of it. You're motivated to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it's just acceptance. It's just, you have to accept what's happening and just get it all out, because it's beyond you.
Right.
It's beyond you. It's more of a divine type of thing.
Right.
And you're going to, you just have to be ready to die.
Because I'll tell you, I went through one when my mom died. It was, and you mentioned this again on the podcast, that a lot of times it has to do with a loss. And then as you were talking, it also, for me, I think, first of all, they come out of nowhere. It's not, and second of all, it's when you actually have to face one of your greatest fears. You know what I mean? And you really have to look it in the face. And it's like a very long letting go process, like a very, very long letting go process. Like I could say throughout my whole life, one of my greatest underlying fears was the fear of abandonment. You know what I mean? And when my mom died, it was the ultimate abandonment for me. And it was 6 months of daily crying. No matter what I tried to do, Kevin, I could meditate, I could go take a walk, I could smoke weed, I could do anything I tried, I could not get out of it.
Right.
And it took 6 months of literal hibernation. And, I still had to go to work and deal with life, but it was just a dark, that's the best word for it. All I remember is darkness.
Yeah.
Like I can't even tell you what I did during that period, but I just remember it was freaking darkness all the time.
That's right.
And crying for no reason.
And it almost always comes from loss, a death of a loved one, loss of a job, things like that. Depression is just different. Depression is victim-oriented thinking.
Right. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah. Depression is like you go into victimhood and the onboard computer is taken over.
Right. And then again, we have the people who are diagnosed with the clinical depression.
That would be which is nutritional deficiency.
Right. I was just right, which would be the quote unquote chemical imbalance. When we get into that, because mental health is a big issue these days. And, this even maybe bipolar could be as much as a nutritional deficiency, right?
Yeah.
So
schizophrenia too.
Yeah. So you talk about the dark night. You kind of know when you're in one. Well, how do you know when you're out of one?
When you stop crying.
Yeah. It's almost like it becomes light again. Like the world starts to lighten up and you can almost see through this curtain that was in front of you.
Yeah. That's absolutely. You start to, every time it happens, you get, your heart opens up a little more.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like Christine T. Marie. I don't know what her name is because it's different every time, but it looks like she's back.
Okay. Well, let's let her in and hear her question. I guess it takes a minute to connect. There we go. All right, T, how are you? Sorry we lost you. Looking forward to hear your question. This is our first guest, so we were kind of disappointed when you dropped off, but now we can see you. Very cool. How are you today, T?
He's in the hall.
Hi, I'm doing very well, and I'm grateful to have figured out I have my laptop going at the same time, with the Facebook and my phone and a new Bluetooth keyboard that wasn't working. So I was like, anyway, I'm here, I'm present in the moment, and actually it's incredibly hopeful and inspiring listening to you guys just talk and your discussion and the things that you're bringing up and how relevant this is to where I am in my life right now. And I've been seeing, big patterns related to codependencies and things outside of self and outside of the now that, are pulling you in constantly different directions, right? And how much my chronic pain is tied to those other things, right? Because your system is saying like, oh, I need this to survive. I need this to reduce my pain. I need this, right? And so I just want to thank you guys for having this platform and opening up people's minds, right, to these ideas and concepts that we're discussing.
Oh, very cool. Well, did you have a specific question? Did you want to ask anything?
Yeah, I do have a specific question. So when it comes to some of the all or nothing thinking related to addiction and codependencies with substances, right? And you see a lot of these organizations, right, like AA, NA, and sort of a theme or a pattern of like, right, you are either all in and you're sober for 40 years,
right,
or like if you don't make that commitment, you're going to relapse and you're going to die, right? So I'm curious about your guys' opinion on like how you could sort of incorporate mindfulness in addiction and like give yourself grace or understanding, or right, and where does that line walk with like that self-restraint?
Well, I can speak on this one. I can definitely speak on this one. I have experience with those programs, and I stopped going to those programs, but yet I did not take drugs or drink after, well, except for smoke weed, but that's not a drug. But so my opinion of those programs are this: they are good to get people off the streets. They are good to give people a community of like-minded people. Okay, for that reason. However, it's programming. They call it the program. So there is definite programming, just like we talked about, going on in there. That's why they call it the programming. Now, I'm not saying this is bad programming, because I can tell you right now, the 12 steps, if done properly, are a path to enlightenment. Okay, on their own, with that, take out the alcohol, use them, and they can be a path to higher consciousness. Okay, that is the 12 steps themselves. The problem is with AA, it's just like a religion where there becomes the people themselves bring in their own doctrines, their own beliefs. So that whole fear mentality of, oh, no, you're good. If you go out and you leave the meetings, you're going to get high and you're going to have a relapse and all that kind of stuff is not true. And part of the reason I left, and I'll be honest with you, because I wanted to prove it wasn't true. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think those programs are good for beginners. Like they say in there, take what you want and leave the rest, because they talk about one day at a time, living in the now. There's some good things in there. Intellect over emotion, good stuff.
The serenity prayer.
The serenity prayer, right. So there's good elements of there, but again, make no mistake about it. It is programming. They call it the program for a reason.
I don't have direct experience with that, but
right.
I am a sitcom connoisseur, and I love the one Mom. And it's a good sitcom, and there's a lot of similarities with Ho'oponopono, because in Ho'oponopono you have to make amends.
Exactly.
So it's similar, except you don't have to keep going into meetings. And so you keep you in addiction programs like that, you find this theme where it's people almost become addicted to the meeting.
It's
I need a meeting.
addiction.
I need a meeting, right? I need a meeting. You're in a town, strange town, and you're like, I need a meeting. Let's find a meeting. We need a meeting. And so,
or your sponsor, right? Like, oh, I got
to call my sponsor. Right. It's like your guru.
Right. So, I know the 12 steps have helped a lot of people, so that's great. But mindfulness is pretty much the cure to everything. So
now, good point you bring up with addiction, Kevin. Is now what is the cause of addiction? I've heard like trauma. I mean, what is the cause? Is it something that you can stop with the nutritional?
It's obsessiveness.
It's obsessiveness.
That's it.
Right.
That's all it is.
So it's a very basic.
Now, don't get me wrong. If something like heroin, for example,
that has a physical component.
Yeah, there is a chemical factor there.
Right.
Hence detox.
Right. Right. Literally, people go through withdrawals and shakes.
People become obsessed. And this is the onboard computer creating a dream.
Right.
And so you can become obsessed with anything. You can collect rocks. You when I was a kid, I was huge into baseball cards.
Me too.
Addicted to baseball cards.
Because it made you feel good in some way, right? It's always things that make you feel, although some people get addicted to bad things, I don't mean like drugs, but literally pain and being abused. Because it's basically, and you would deal with that through mindfulness pretty much.
Absolutely. Mindfulness is the cure to pretty much everything.
Right.
And we just become obsessive, and we can become obsessive with ourselves, which is typically called being selfish. And you can become obsessed with everything, you can be, anything from sex to tattoos, anything.
Because it gives you some good feeling inside.
It gives you feeling,
and it
gives you identity.
Right.
Anything, identity, we stick our claws into. When I was a kid, I was a huge sports person. You walked in my room, there's going to be photos of Michael Jordan, Barry Sanders, the guys that I idolized because they did things I couldn't even imagine. I was obsessed. If there was no obsession, sports would be out of business.
So they're playing on one of our most basic programs, which is to become obsessed with things that we like, with things that give us pleasure.
We all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. So we have to be a Democrat or a Republican or conservative or liberal or a Giants fan or a Green Bay Packers fan, or we need to be this religion or that religion, or we need to have this opinion or that opinion. But it's important to understand that none of it is real. It's literally not real. It's all made up. Opinions are made up.
You're not. It's just your political views,
It's made up.
Yeah, it is. It's all made up, part of this illusory world. So
even the opinion that you gave about the 12
AA.
steps. Yes.
Yeah. That's my opinion.
That's your opinion based on direct experience.
Right.
So that's a good opinion. But opinions aren't real.
Right. Right. And that was one thing.
Saying, hey, look, there's the sun in the sky. That's not an opinion. You can look up and go, oh, yeah, there's a shiny thing in the sky. It's not an opinion.
Right. That's a fact. Right.
That's a fact.
Right. And then so when you start identifying with your opinions, that, it becomes part of your identity. That was one of, bring it back to what T asked. One of the problems I had with AA was the first thing you would say is, hi, my name is Joe and I'm an alcoholic. Well, no, I'm not. There's a lot more to me than that. I'm not an alcoholic. I had a problem with alcohol, but I'm not drinking right now. So therefore I'm not an alcoholic. And I refuse to say it.
And the problem was all programming.
Yeah. I mean, you go to the meetings and every day you're reinforcing that, oh, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, I'm an alcoholic. Every single time you go to those meetings, it's reinforcing that. And how are you ever going to get over that? Because there's always that identity that's associated with being an alcoholic.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, yeah, you have to give up that identity. No, you're not an alcoholic. You had a problem with alcohol, but now you're moving forward. You know what I mean? You're moving. And as long, look, I'm not saying you should try, oh, let me have a drink here. If you had a problem, then you stay away from it. It's like if you had a bad relationship with somebody, of course, some people do keep going back. But the thing is, you break up, and you got to break up with the drugs, and you got to break up with the alcohol and say, thank you very much. I learned a lot, but it's time to move on.
Right.
How was that good, T?
That was very, very helpful. I loved the discussion that it brought forth, and some things that I had been pondering too, that you really touched on. That connection, that association with like your identity, and also looking for a community, something bigger than yourself, and labeling yourself. I mean, the I am statement is so powerful. Whatever you choose to put in after the I am,
that's what you will become.
Yep.
That's
all right. We're going to get on to another question.
Yeah.
Thank you for calling in, by the way, T. Feel free to call in any week.
She's in the Hall of Fame. First one.
She's in the Hall of Fame as the first call. And,
I love it. Well, Joe is one of my good friends here on VX, and I love seeing you like just in your authentic, like your passion here. It shines, and I love seeing this. I'm definitely gonna go back and listen to the other podcasts, and I'm gonna buy this book on audiobook, because I'm almost finished with another book. It's called The Way Out, and talking about some similar strategies related to chronic pain. And so this is all just like falling into alignment, on the same page, literally and figuratively. So it's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Reese, and to be the first one to just like propel this. I hope this gives it even more momentum moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, and you made me blush. I appreciate that.
Thank you for being
All right, T. We will see you soon.
All right. Hasta luego. I'm gonna stay on.
Yeah, you could stay on and listen.
End the video. Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye,
guys.
So we got one from Josh on IG, and it is: can scoliosis be reversed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the muscles are pulling the spine to the side. And so what we need to do is we need to get the muscles more functional, and then the spine will slowly start to get back to normal. Scoliosis is, especially if we get it in a young person.
Right.
If somebody has scoliosis and they're, let's say, 12 years old, less work.
Right.
If they're 70 years old, more work. So yeah, postural therapy can definitely bring that back. And then of course we would hit them with a protocol, get them on the right nutrients, and get, in the 90 essential nutrients, we got a ton of calcium and magnesium, and yeah, we get that going.
You could get that going, right? So that's all. And it seems that it would be, it's a postural issue.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. So there's the answer for that. Okay. Now here's one. Do you think that we eat more because that we eat more because unconsciously we are trying to get some nutrition?
Absolutely. Yes. So if you notice, there's a lot of plant-based people that are chubby.
Yes.
Okay. That's mineral deficiency. And a lot of people that are chubby or obese who are in the gym and they're on the treadmill and they're working hard and it's just not happening. And that is typically a mineral deficiency. Once you start putting it into your body, you eat less because your 90 essential nutrients are being satisfied by the body. And then now you're just eating some food for some satiation and some energy, So in other words, this is taking care of the nutrition. And then the food is just allowing you to walk and talk and get some energy. And
so you eat more to get right. Yeah,
I can relate. I mean, you can go back and look at photos of me and 10 years.
Remember.
I would, I was, chubby. I wasn't fat, but I was
you had
chubby.
More weight on you.
I was chubby, and I was nutrient deficient, so I had to nip that in the bud. And now I'm, always around 170. So.
Right. Same with me. My weight has fluctuated quite a bit throughout my life, but that's an interesting correlation. That's something I never would have thought to be the same, to be a reason. I just thought people, were hungry. But okay, so we have one more question here, and this is a quick one. What are eye floaters, and how do we get rid of them?
Eye floaters are collagen fibers in the eye. And, it's kind of like dandruff of the eye. And how do you get rid of them? Well, I mean, there could be a nutritional deficiency there, and there could be a shoulder impingement there. Anything with the eyes, nose, and ears, you got to think shoulders right away. Shoulders. So, we need to see the position of the shoulders and see if there's a blockage, see if there's an impingement.
Got it.
But eye floaters aren't dangerous, and neither are nodules that we talked about earlier.
Oh, okay. So they're not dangerous.
No.
But they're just almost, I find them as they're almost a little minor irritation.
Yeah, they're annoying.
Yeah, an annoyance. So, all right. Well, we're almost out of time for this week. And I just want to thank everybody who sent in questions, and thank T for calling in. Much appreciated. And I think it was a great show today. I'm looking forward to next week. Just want to remind people to leave your questions and comments in the Facebook group, or send them via.
I just want to chime in. We're not here next week.
Oh, yes. We're taking next week off.
Yep, because we're launching the 120-day program next week.
Oh, okay.
With 20% off.
Lovely.
And then we'll be back the following Tuesday, and we're going to have Coach Amber.
And right. Coach Amber is going to be on the show. So you finally get to meet the young woman who's been talking to you in the group. All right, everybody. Thank you. Like, follow, join the Facebook group, share this video, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for watching the Peace Over Pain podcast live inside our clinic's Facebook group. Be sure to submit a question or comment for next week's show at peaceoverpain.com. Also, perform some goodwill and tell a friend in pain that you found their solution. Refer them to the Peace Over Pain podcast and the Peace Over Pain book and help them move closer to their miracle.